Hey, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are when you see this video. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It's still November 29th, 2025, although this video should come out tomorrow afternoon. This is the second important article that I wanted to share with you. As I had said in my previous video, I had a couple of important articles. This is my second one. This is a pretty long piece. But again, it's important because I hate to bring this to you again, but this is another issue with our patriarch in Constantinople. And what's been going on? People have asked me, could you tell me a little bit about him? Well, apparently I found some history here, but also a terrible problem that's been going on since this summer. I haven't really covered in the Church of Cyprus, and then an older issue in the Church of Greece, all having to do with the EP. So I feel compelled to share that with you as well. I think it's important for us to know these things. We should be praying about this, obviously. Let me just go to it. It's important. So this is Appeal to the Fanner, Justice Served or Justice Averted. This is a article that was written by a Greek theologian and protopresbyter Anastasios Gassopoulos, and he published this large analytical article on the Greek language UOJ website devoted to contemporary reality of the ecumenical throne as the pan-Orthodox appellate authority. So they presented to it without any abridgment, the full text. So it's going to take a bit, but I need for you all to understand this, so I'm going to read it. It's a historical overview of this whole situation that he's getting into with the background of the Church of Greece that happened with this incident many years ago, and what's going on now with the Church of Cyprus, with one of its bishops. Ekleton, or an appeal, is the right to petition a higher ecclesiastical court for review. Over time, however, the term ekleton became firmly associated with the canonical right of the ecumenical patriarch to consider the cases of clergy under the jurisdiction of the ecumenical throne who believed they were unjustly condemned by ecclesiastical courts. A historical analysis of the appellate institution shows that it first appears in the canons of the Sardican Council, specifically canons 3 and 5, convened in Sophia in 343 AD. These canons were adopted with the purpose of protecting St. Athanasius the Great and the bishops aligned with him. Importantly, these hierarchs had been deposed by a number of councils, with broad episcopal representation, a fact that demonstrates that even great saints could become the object of conciliar condemnation. In this situation, the council entrusted the review of the case to Pope Julius of Rome, who at the time upheld the Orthodox faith. According to the decision, the Pope received authority to form an ecclesiastical court to review the case. Notably, this canon granted the Pope strictly procedural authority related to organizing the judicial body, not the authority to hear appeals single-handedly. However, the ruling was limited in duration, as evidenced by its rejection in the Latin Church of North Africa. The local councils of Carthage, 419 AD, repeatedly denied the Roman bishop the right to review their decisions and forbade clergy from appealing to the ends of the earth, to Rome. Later, the Fourth Ecumenical Council, by its 9th and 17th canons, transferred appellate authority to the throne of Constantinople. Commentaries differ as to the scope of these canons. Do they apply to all clergy of the Universal Orthodox Church, or only to the clergy subordinate to the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople? This question, however, is not the focus of the present study. We personally follow the view of the great canonist of our church, St. Nicodemus the Hagorite, who, summarizing the entire patristic and canonical tradition of earlier fathers and canonists with irrefutable reasoning, inclines toward the second position, that the Patriarch of Constantinople does not have authority to act within the eparchies and parishes of other patriarchs, and this canon, Chalcedon 9, did not grant him the right of appeal for the entire church. So, This is from the Rudder, 1976. Nevertheless, beyond the sacred canons, the statutes of certain churches grant the right of appeal to the ecumenical throne for clergy not under Constantinople's jurisdiction. The autocephalous churches that provide this right to their hierarchs are the Church of Greece and the Church of Cyprus. This possibility afforded by the statutes of two churches does not contradict the sacred canons. Therefore, hierarchs of the churches of Greece and Cyprus may appeal to the ecumenical throne, not on the basis of the canons, Chalcedon 9 and 17, but on the basis of Articles 44(2) and 81 of the respective statutes. It was precisely this right, granted by him by the Church of Cyprus, Statute Article 81 in Metropolitan Tychikos of Paphos, exercised when he submitted his appeal to the Ecumenical Patriarchate on July 5, 2025. In this appeal, the hierarch contested the decision of the Synod of Cyprus of May 22, 2025, which deposed him. The Patriarchal Synod, in its ruling of October 17, 2025, partially upheld the appeal, indeed establishing procedural violations, or, as they most delicately phrased it, upon reviewing the case, it was established that during the examination of the case of Metropolitan Tychikos, Tychikos, in the Holy Synod of the Church of Cyprus, omissions were made with respect to the provisions of this statute. Yet, according to the same text, all members of the Patriarchal Synod unanimously upheld the synodal decision of the Holy Church of Cyprus, the very decision which they acknowledged had been procedurally flawed. Okay, thus the Patriarchal Synod unequivocally recognizes the unlawfulness and injustice of the decision, but simultaneously justifies not the victim of the injustice, but the party that committed it. Lord have mercy. Here it is appropriate to recall the decision 1983-1979 of the Council of State of Greece, which confirms the gospel truth that the children of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the children of light. The council, reviewing a petition to annul a synodal act after a decision of the Ecumenical Patriarchate on an appeal, ruled that the competent ecclesiastical court is obligated to review the case. If upon reviewing the legality of the appeal decision any violation is found, the case must be returned for correction. Ultimately, an act imposing deposition or removal from a metropolitan throne must be annulled if the appeal review establishes any illegality, procedural or substantive. After annulment, the case must be returned to the competent authority for new consideration consistent with the findings of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. With these principles in mind, we now turn to earlier patriarchal decisions on appeals that have profoundly damaged confidence in this institution. The case of the former Metropolitan of the Church of Greece, convicted of a criminal offense 20 years ago. The Church of Greece was shaken by a major scandal involving grave accusations of moral, financial, canonical, and criminal misconduct by PM, former Metropolitan of a large metropolis. Since he has reposed and stands before the righteous judge, we omit his name. This former bishop was implicated in serious scandals. A. More than 100,500 wait, how do you say that? 1,500,000 euros was found in his offshore account, which he acknowledged as his own, calling it for a rainy day for old age. B. He was accused of serious moral offenses incompatible with the priesthood, shameful even to speak of. Recordings of his telephone conversations were published but were not examined because they had been obtained through wiretapping. He was convicted by this 5-member criminal court of appeals and sentenced to 6 years in prison for embezzling 56 million drachma from a monastery. Lord have mercy. He served part of his sentence, was paroled for health reasons, and was later found drowned after suffering an ischemic episode. Because of the widespread scandal and grave offense caused to the faithful, the Holy Synod, applying Article 34(8) of the Statute Law 1351 slash 1983, Article 15, first suspended the Metropolitan for 6 months and then declared his throne vacant without following the procedure mandated by law 5383 slash 1932 on ecclesiastical courts. The deposed Metropolitan appealed the synodal decision to the Ecumenical Patriarchate. The EP reviewed the appeal, examined the documents, and without requiring the appearance of the appellate, issued a synodal decision, upholding the appeal as admissible and well-founded because the required procedure, ecclesiastical court, had not been followed. The Patriarchal Synod exonerated the deposed hierarch and required the Church of Greece to hold a canonical trial. Constantinople did not examine the case on its merits at all. In a letter, number 1203/2005, Patriarch Bartholomew wrote, "In the opinion of the EP, the case of Metropolitan so-and-so should be heard by the competent ecclesiastical courts. Therefore, without entering into the substance of the matter at this time, we fraternally call upon you to refer it to the ecclesiastical courts, whose decisions the Mother Church awaits in order to take a final position." Did he even actually read any of this? Later, as mentioned above, the 5-member Court of Appeals sentenced the Metropolitan to 6 years for criminal embezzlement, a verdict upheld by the Supreme Court's decision 778/2009. The decision was sent to the Church of Greece, and the Court of First Instance, the hierarchical court, initiated the process of deposition in accordance with Law 5383/1932. The deposed hierarch submitted a second appeal to the EP. Again, the Patriarchal Synod exonerated him for the same reason, again without examining the case itself. This is insane. Again, the Church of Greece was ordered to complete the required procedure. Patriarch Bartholomew wrote in letter number 877/2009, "The Holy Mother Church reverently follows the sacred canons and has established that the second instance hierarchical synodal court of your church has not yet reviewed this case." Does he even know what he's talking about? He then added, "Before considering the appeal on its merits, the procedure mandated by the sacred canons and existing Law 5383/1932 on ecclesiastical justice must be completed. After all, the Mother Church will examine the matter definitively, and irrevocably." In essence, the Patriarchal Synod justified the appellate for a second time solely on procedural grounds. The Church of Greece, obeying the patriarchal directive, convened the second instance court, which declared the appeal inadmissible without examining its merits. PM then filed a third appeal, and for the third time the EP upheld it. In letter number 258/21.5.2010, the Church of Greece was sternly ordered to hear the case on its merits and return the proceedings to the Patriarchate for final judgment. I think these are conclusions right here. The Patriarchal Synod 3 times required the Church of Greece to hold a canonical trial in accordance with the sacred canons and ecclesiastical law, with upholding all 3 appeals and finally exonerating the former Metropolitan. Number 2, the Patriarchal Synod completely ignored the criminal conviction issued by the 5-member Court of Appeals, ignored the staggering, unthinkable sum of 1,500,000 euros kept offshore, ignored failed to hear the shameful recording circulating online, and most seriously, ignored the profound scandal and upheaval inflicted upon the faithful, leaving the case unresolved for more than 5 years. What a disaster. This is shameful. Number 3, in none of the 3 decisions did the Patriarchal Synod advise the former Metropolitan to obey, that's in quotes here, obey the Synod of his church for his own spiritual benefit and for the peace and unity of the church, as it did in the case of Metropolitan Tychikos of Paphos. Finally, this is number 4, the most regrettably, the Patriarchal Synod refused to hear the case of PM on its merits and close this painful chapter, which for more than 5 years tormented the Church of Greece, its leadership, and its faithful for his own spiritual benefit and for the peace of the unity of the Greek Church. It's terrible. The case of the deposed, excommunicated, and unordained Ukrainian Schismatics, of course. We go into all that. Particularly striking and profoundly consequential moment for pan-Orthodox communion was the decision of the EP on October 11, 2018 to accept the appeals of the Schismatics, the former Metropolitan Philaret Denisenko, and the unordained Makary Maletic. The former Metropolitan of Kiev Philaret was deposed by the Russian Church on July 11, 1992 for a series of canonical offenses immediately after his deposition. He personally traveled to the EP, where he submitted an appeal against the decision. I guess they know where the weak man is. They'll go there and do all that and get it the way they want. If they want something done and they done something bad happened to them, they'll just go to the EP and he'll turn everything around for them. This is shameful. Patriarch Bartholomew, in reviewing Philaret's appeal, sent a delegation to the Russian Church headed by Metropolitan John Ziolis of Pergamon in order to obtain information firsthand about what had occurred and to avoid any misunderstanding in this case. In the end, the Patriarchal Synod rejected Philaret's appeal and confirmed his deposition. In his patriarchal letter to the Patriarch of Moscow, Patriarch Bartholomew emphasized, our holy great Church of Christ, fully recognizing the exclusive competence of your most holy Russian Church, accepts the synodally adopted decisions concerning this person, not wishing to create any difficulties for your brother church. Well, isn't that something? The decision of the Moscow Patriarchate to depose Philaret was accepted by all Orthodox churches without exception and without reservation. Philaret, however, refused to accept it and continued to serve and to ordain pseudo-bishops, thereby strengthening and expanding the schism. For this reason, in 1997, the Moscow Patriarchate formally anathematized him, a sentence which was accepted by the EP and by the fullness of pan-Orthodox ecclesial communion and consciousness. On Makary Maletic, he was deposed by the canonical UOC, the Moscow Patriarchate, or any Orthodox was never deposed. Okay, so he was never deposed by the canonical UOC, the Moscow Patriarchate, or any Orthodox church at all. The reason is simple. According to the ecclesial consciousness of all Orthodox churches, up to 2018, he was not a bishop because he had no canonical ordination. His episcopacy, good Lord, derives from pseudo-bishops who themselves had no apostolic succession since they were ordained, quote-unquote, by the deposed former bishop, charlatan, and self-styled impostor Viktor Chekalin. This means that Makary Maletic was never tried, never judged, and therefore never sentenced to deposition or removal from office because he was never a bishop to begin with. Because Makary was never judged or condemned, it is obvious that there exists no guilty verdict against him. Therefore, an appeal is meaningless, since he cannot submit an appeal to the ecumenical throne. According to the canonical tradition, an appeal challenges a specific unjust verdict issued by an ecclesiastical court. As the great commentator Balsamon succinctly put it, every condemned person who considers himself unjustly condemned is granted recourse through appeal. Thus, for Makary Maletic, there exists no subject of appeal since he was never condemned and therefore has no legal right to appeal. An appeal submitted by someone who has never been tried or sentenced has no legal force. One cannot appeal a verdict that does not exist. And yet, the Patriarchal Synod proceeded to review such a petition, quote-unquote, and even issued a ruling against all established pan-Orthodox ecclesial consciousness On October 11, 2018, the Synod, by formal act, accepted the request, quote-unquote, to appeal from the deposed and excommunicated Filaret Denisenko and the unordained Makari Malatic and those with them, quote-unquote, and, quote, restored them to their episcopal or priestly rank, end quote. This is madness. Critical questions. Number 1. What exactly was contained in the appeal submitted in October 2018 by Filaret, by Makari, and by those with them? Why were these appeals never made public? Did Filaret not already, this is number 2, did Filaret not already submit an appeal 33 years ago in June 1992, which was reviewed and rejected by the Patriarchal Synod on August 26, 1992? Is there even a provision for appealing a decision of the Patriarchal Synod? On what decision did Makari base an appeal if he had never been condemned? Is an appeal possible in the absence of a judgment? What then is being appealed? Who are the individuals that appealed together with Makari Malatic? What decisions are they appealing if none of them have canonical ordination and therefore have never been judged or condemned? Into what episcopal or priestly rank were Makari Malatic and his followers, men without apostolic succession, ordained, quote-unquote, by an unordained impostor, quote-unquote, restored? Is it even possible to, quote-unquote, restore someone to the episcopacy, I can't pronounce it well, who never possessed it? Can a man without canonical ordination and apostolic succession perform ordinations? Sadly, not a single one of these critical questions has been answered. In any case, by its decision on October 11, 2018, the Patriarchal Synod accepted the appeals and fully exonerated the deposed, excommunicated, and unordained schismatics, Filaret Denisenko, Makari Malatic, and their followers. This decision led to catastrophic consequences for pan-Orthodox unity and for the peace of the Ukrainian people, as we all know. And once again, the Patriarchal Synod did not advise any of these men to obey the decision of the Holy Synod of their own church for the sake of their spiritual benefit and for the peace and unity of the church, as it is sternly advised Metropolitan Tychikos of Paphos. So let's get to this Metropolitan Tychikos of Paphos. This is the one that's been going on since the summer out of Cyprus. As is well known, Metropolitan Tychikos of Paphos submitted an appeal to the ecumenical throne on June 5th, 2025, exercising his right under Article 81 of the Statute of the Church of Cyprus. He appealed the decision of the Synod of Cyprus of May 22nd, 2025, which removed him from the Paphos See. The procedure followed in this case resembled a medieval inquisition, one that insulted both the legal culture of our time and the very dignity of the Orthodox Church. Metropolitan Tychikos was condemned with the gravest violations of ecclesiastical law. None of the mandatory procedures were observed. No investigative committee was formed. No investigator was appointed. No inquiry was carried out, and none of the accusations were examined. There was no investigator's report, no ecclesiastical prosecutor, no formal decision to initiate proceedings, and no indictment. No witnesses for the prosecution were called, nor were witnesses for the defense. The accused himself was not properly summoned to the session. The ecclesiastical prosecutor presented neither a recommendation on guilt nor a recommendation on sentencing. In short, not a single article prescribed by the statute or the sacred canons was followed. Shameful. So then, what actually happened? In essence, Archbishop Georgios of Cyprus personally combined within himself the roles of accuser, investigator, ecclesiastical prosecutor, witness for the prosecution, judge, presiding officer, and spokesman. Using well-known methods, he secured a temporary majority in the synod and, in violation of all sacred canons, statutory provisions, and the elementary principles of due process, forced through the decision to remove Metropolitan Tychikos from office. The remaining 9 members of the synod who signed the decision did not examine the presented testimonies, did not study the evidence cited by the archbishop, and did not question a single witness. They deprived the accused of legal counsel, refused him the right to call witnesses in his defense, denied him access to the evidence, and effectively stripped him of any possibility to defend himself. That is horrific. And yet, they issued the verdict lightly, guilty and removed from office. What the heck? Everyone knows, even if they hesitate to acknowledge it publicly, that the trial, quote unquote, of May 22, 2025 was unacceptable, not only procedurally, but also substantively. Not a single accusation was examined, let alone proven. Indeed, from the moment the decision was issued until today, every accusation has collapsed, revealing its wholly slanderous nature. This is precisely why the proper procedure was not followed. Following it would inevitably have revealed the truth. Here's the first accusation collapsed. No cooperation with schismatics, quote unquote, was proven. On the contrary, Metropolitan Tychikos opposed those who misinterpreted the 15th canon of the First-Second Council. Related, the trial of Metropolitan, I'm just going to call him Ty. Metropolitan Ty, when the church washes its hands. The second accusation collapsed. The allegation that he refused to perform mixed marriages was not proven. On the contrary, acting with canonical rigor, Metropolitan Ty successfully encouraged non-Orthodox spouses to receive Orthodox baptism. He baptized more than 30 adults during his 2 years as a hierarch. For those unwilling to be baptized, he issued dispensations for mixed marriages by economia. 36 such marriages were performed from 2023 to 2025. Despite these facts, he was condemned for allegedly forbidding mixed marriages. Third accusation collapsed. The claim that he committed a canonical offense by consecrating a small chapel dedicated to 2 saints, Epiphanios and Nectarios of Pentapolis, and a pious elder who was not proven and could not justify such a severe punishment. Moreover, it was revealed that the accuser, Archbishop Georgios himself, had consecrated not a small chapel, but a large parish church in honor of a saint 3 years before that saint's official canonization. 3 years before, good Lord. Most shocking, during a TV appearance, the Archbishop lied, denying this fact to avoid uncomfortable questions. The final accusation collapsed. No evidence was found whatsoever of, quote-unquote, serious deficiencies in the governance and pastoral care of the metropolis of Paphos. On the contrary, the liturgical, catechetical, and pastoral work accomplished in just 2 years under Metropolitan Ty was exemplary. Extremely striking, also, are the financial results of Ty's administration, according to the official annual financial reports approved by the Central Financial Service of the Holy Synod of Cyprus. In 2020, it was 820,760 euros under Georgios, now Archbishop. 2021, it was 607,411 euros, a decrease of 213,349 euros under Georgios. 2022, 509,312 euros, a further decrease of 98,099 under Georgios. 2023, 1,100,698 euros, an increase of 591,386 euros. First year of Ty's episcopacy. In 2024, 2 million estimated, since Archbishop Georgios, acting as locum tenens, did not publish the figures. Why not? Perhaps to avoid revealing the tremendous success of Ty's administration in 2024. In Ty's first year, 2023, the finances of the metropolis more than doubled by more than 116%. While in the previous 2 years, 2021 and 22, under Georgios, they had decreased by about 16% and 25%. Should not the locum tenens of the metropolis, Archbishop Georgios responsibly explained to the faithful, with concrete data, what is happening with their donations, how are the declines under Georgios to be explained, and how is the explosive growth under Tai to be explained. In Greece, if such discrepancies appeared, the financial prosecutor would undoubtedly intervene. One thing is certain and indisputable. During the tenure of Metropolitan Tai, 23 to 25, the metropolis of Paphos experienced extraordinary flourishing both spiritually and financially. It was precisely this flourishing that stirred the envy of the devil and his instruments who orchestrated the deposition of the Metropolitan. Review of the appeal for the Patriarchal Synod. And yet, this decision, blatantly uncanonical, unconstitutional, unlawful, unjust, contradicting the legal principles of the civilized world, was upheld by the ecumenical throne of Constantinople, which is regarded as the guardian of canonical order, quote unquote, in the Orthodox Church of Christ. Still more grievous is this. The Patriarchal Synod acknowledged Metropolitan Tai's appeal establishing and declaring that procedural violations had indeed occurred, and then, contradicting itself, approved the result of the corrupted trial. Of course, the decision expresses itself in a very elegant manner, stating that, quote, omissions were identified during the examination of the case of Metropolitan Tai and the Holy Synod of the Church of Cyprus regarding the provisions of its state, end quote. So simple. Omissions were identified. Your All Holiness, your Eminences, the trampling of episcopal honor and dignity, the total destruction of the judicial procedure prescribed by the sacred canons, the statute, secular law, international conventions on the right to a fair trial, and the universal respect for the rights of the accused, rooted in the Old Testament and secured by the entire history of legal culture. In short, the fact that the Synod of Cyprus left nothing standing is treated by the Patriarchal Synod as mere commissions that can be casually brushed aside. It is difficult even to comment on the following sentence of the Patriarchal and Synodal decision of October 17, 2025, regarding the appeal of the Metropolitan Tai. Nevertheless, all the members of the Holy and Sacred Synod, judging on the merits, unanimously upheld the Synodal decision of the Most Holy Church of Cyprus. Wow. There's some real problems with these churches and these people, these particular people. This raises a question. What does judging on the merits mean? Is this now considered a proper ecclesiastical trial? Has the prophetic command, execute justice and righteousness and deliver the oppressed from the hands of the oppressor, been fulfilled? I dare not answer. A thorough commentary on this synodal decision would require a full study, but let us reflect. How would we react to the legal system of our country if the procedure used on the Fanor on October 17, 2025 was for reviewing an appeal were used by criminal courts for appeals and cassations? Would this bring honor to our country? Would we accept such a trial for ourselves? Absolutely not. Then why do we tolerate this in the Church of Christ and remain silent with fatalistic resignation? Why do we consider it natural that secular justice must be more righteous than ecclesiastical justice? Is this not evidence of the decay of our ecclesial life, both personal and collective? Is this not the transformation of the church from the body of Christ into a medieval fiefdom ruled by an unaccountable Lord? And unfortunately, the questions only multiply when we compare the Tai case with the two other appeal cases examined above. How is it possible that in two similar matters of appeal, the same body, the same judicial authority issued completely opposite decisions? In the cases of the convicted former Metropolitan PM of the Church of Greece and Metropolitan Tai of Paphos, the subject of appeal was identical. Both churches, Greece and Cyprus, refused to conduct a canonical trial based on the sacred canons and their statutes. The result of both appellates was likewise identical. Judge me according to the established procedure. So they were doing the right things. What lesson is the EP giving these churches? And I mean, this is just disgraceful. In the case of the former Metropolitan PM, the Patriarchal Synod fully granted the appellate's request. It did not examine the matter on the merits and sent it back to the Church of Greece for a canonical trial, effectively exonerating the former Metropolitan. This happened 3 times. In all 3 appeals, the former hierarch was vindicated by the Patriarchal Synod. But in the case of Metropolitan Ty, the Patriarchal Synod, after acknowledging the absence of any canonical trial, did not grant his request and did not send the case back to the Church of Cyprus for a proper hearing. Instead, lacking any of the necessary materials, no testimony, no evidence from prosecution or defense, the Synod issued a decision on the merits and upheld the conviction, condemning the Metropolitan. Why does one and the same judicial body issue completely opposite decisions for identical cases? What is the reason? Perhaps the explanation lies in the personalities of the appellates. One does not want to believe this, for the exonerated former Metropolitan had been sentenced to 6 years in prison for a criminal offense, held more than 1,500,000 euros in offshore accounts, and had scandalous recorded conversations circulating publicly. Meanwhile, the condemned Metropolitan Ty is a man of modest means, exemplary in financial administration, and in his personal life known for strictness and integrity. Perhaps then, patriarchal decisions depend not on the appellates, but on the personalities of the presiding hierarchs of the local synods involved. I cannot know. However, I must note, A. In the case of the former Metropolitan exonerated by the Patriarchal Synod, the Patriarchate annulled the synodal decision originally issued under Archbishop Christodolos of Athens, causing serious difficulty for the Blessed Christodolos and then for the Church as a whole. Again, that's right. You do all this mess and then you just cause more pain and more grieving and more problems for the rest of the Church. B. Could the condemnation of Metropolitan Ty be explained by what was openly discussed in Cyprus? On television, it was publicly and by name asserted that although everyone recognized the injustice done to Ty, the Patriarchate cannot do otherwise than uphold the will of Archbishop Georgios and the deposition of Ty for 2 reasons. First, the Patriarchate needs Archbishop Georgios' support regarding Ukrainian autocephaly, since only 3 Greek-speaking churches recognize it. This is just absolutely disgusting. So here he was talking about, we should drop our egos and try to work out, this communion with the Pope. The EP was saying, we have to drop our egos, let go of that and be, good. Yet here he is. This is all about himself. What he wants. This is disgusting. Moreover, it was widely reported also online that Archbishop Georgios allegedly stated that if the Patriarchate did not support him, he would cease commemorating Metropolitan Epiphanios of the OCU. So again, a kind of blackmail. This is all disgusting for our hierarchs. This behavior is unacceptable. Sorry, but it is. They are supposed to be our leaders. Second, the Patriarchate cannot alienate Georgios and the Synod of Cyprus because the Cypriot Church generously finances it. Oh my God. This is outrageous. Both of these claims were voiced on television by a theologian of the Church of Cyprus who knows the inner workings of ecclesiastical politics quite well. Naturally, I do not share such approaches, nor do I wish to know or comment further. In any case, such rumors are deeply offensive to the Church of Cyprus, to the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and to all of Orthodoxy. But if even a grain of truth is present, may God have mercy on us. As for the comparison between the patriarchal decision that exonerated the Ukrainian appellates and the one that condemned Ty, everyone understands that the magnitudes are incomparable. Of course, we are not surprised that the deposed, anathematized, and unordained Ukrainian schismatics were exonerated, quote-unquote. Their exoneration, quote-unquote, served as the foundation of the fragile edifice of Ukrainian autocephaly built to advance certain geopolitical goals. And there it is. Geopolitical goals supported by our State Department. I mean, this is just... So... In contrast, Metropolitan Ty, young in years and episcopal service, enjoys the love of the people, is faithful to ecclesiastical tradition, which some find unwelcome, and leads a life of purity and transparency that renders him immune to blackmail. In the event of his vindication, he becomes potentially dangerous for spiritual, ecclesial reasons that have direct geopolitical implications. Let him who understands understand. Thus, on October 17, 2025, the Patriarchal Synod of the Ecumenical Throne upheld the decision of the Synod of Cyprus and thereby affirmed the injustice, the ethos, and the style so glaringly manifested by the ecclesiastical leadership of Cyprus. At the same time, the Patriarchal Decree condemned Metropolitan Ty of Paphos, and along with him condemned ecclesiastical order, canonical tradition, and the Church of Cyprus itself. Above all, it doomed the people of God to orphanhood, deprived of their true spiritual father, so that soon afterward they might receive as a stepfather one adulterer supposedly in the image and place of Christ. I will quote St. John Chrysostom, who, after being unjustly driven from his throne by the fury of another quote-unquote beast, Theophilus of Alexandria, wrote to Bishop Cyriacus concerning his successor Arsacius. I have heard about that empty babbler Arsacius, that he has grieved all the brethren who refused to commune with him. Many of them have died in prison because of me. Your beatitude, Archbishop of Cyprus, do you see? Others before you refused communion and rejected that babbler Arsacius, who was imposed upon them as bishop in place of the unjustly deposed Chrysostom. For that wolf in sheep's clothing, having the appearance of a bishop, but being an adulterer, is like an adulterous woman who joins herself to another while her lawful husband is still alive. Thus, this man is an adulterer, not of the flesh, but of the spirit. For while I was still alive, he seized the throne of the church. That's from St. John Chrysostom, letter 112, the Bishop Cyriacus in exile. Another letter he writes, when you hear of the churches, one has sunk, another is wavering, another is overwhelmed by savage waves, one has taken a wolf instead of a shepherd, another a pirate instead of a helmsman, another an executioner instead of a healer. This is painful, he says. Sadly, ecclesiastical history is repeating itself in our days on Cyprus, and Paphos is now called to experience the post-Ty era, just as Constantinople endured the post-Chrysostom period, when it had a wolf instead of a shepherd, a pirate instead of a helmsman, an executioner instead of a physician. In Paphos, after the unjust removal of Ty, there will dwell, in the words of St. John Chrysostom, a wolf in sheep's clothing, having the appearance of a bishop, but being an adulterer not of the flesh, but of the spirit. For while the lawful bishop Ty lives, he has seized the throne of the church. Finally, the Patriarchal Decree of October 17, 2025 is a grave blow to the very institution of appeal to the ecumenical throne, who now will dare seek justice there, keeping in mind the case of Ty. Unless he resembles in character and in capabilities the late PM, the former Metropolitan, or the excommunicated, anathematized, and unordained Ukrainian Schismatics, only then will he certainly be vindicated. Is there any doubt that in the future, when some insistently demand recognition of the quote-unquote canonical right of the elect, before the pan-Orthodox communion of local churches, many faithful will merely laugh, taking it as a joke? Let us reflect carefully on who will bear responsibility for this before the faithful people, before the church, and before history, with deep sorrow and pain for an institution that has been turned from a guarantor of justice into a reward of injustice. Anastasios Gassopoulos, Presbyter. Wow. I know, I hope you bared with me through this whole thing, but this is a great piece he wrote. You can tell it was very painful for him. This is outrageous. It's disgraceful. It's shameful. The EP and those following under him are okaying injustice, going against canons, all for political reasons, because, I want this autocephaly for this schismatic church, and these people I want to I got to do this because of that. And if anybody goes against me, then I'm just going to go against them. This is not how a archbishop should be acting. And indeed, I agree with others that he should step down and resign. Somebody else should be in for him. Now, I realize that according to Saint, I think it was Saint Porphyrius and Saint Elder Ephraim. Oh yes, after this war, there's going to be a new crew. I hope so, but nothing's etched in stone. I believe that when they say those things, they're telling the truth. But let's pray this happens. I remember my priest's wife told me like a decade or so ago, we were discussing something in at coffee hour, and she had said that, I think we were talking about future events, prophecies, and she said, well, that the Greek, the way I understood it was like the Greek Patriarchate was going to fall. Not the other ones. Well, we can definitely see that over the past several years that it's heading that way. Rewarding injustice, crimes, criminal acts, violations of canons, these people should be defrocked, excommunicated. They need to resign, whatever. That may sound too much. I may, some people might find that I shouldn't be judging, but I judge by actions. I do pray that God enlightens Patriarch Bartholomew so that he can repent before he leaves this world. But I really don't think he needs to be in this position anymore. It can't continue like this. Anyway, thanks for hopefully making it to the end of this video with me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following my channel and supporting me. Until next time.